So, Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to whoever who has joined us today. Man, today is a very special day for me to start this very new program on the forum of CXO Global. We have named it Technovation, which basically stands for technological innovation, which is a need of the time. Just to start with, the CXO Global Forum is an emerging knowledge sharing platform for the global thought leaders to help and build a global impact in technology, disruption, transformation, and innovation. CXO believes in change, and that can be done through bringing thought leaders from all walks of life to drive towards a greater knowledge economy. So today, considering the need of the time, we have brought a very hot topic for you, which is the privacy evolution, which is having an increasing demand. In today's digital environment, the impact of the security and privacy breaches on the continuity, sustainability, and the profitability of the organizations around the globe is clear. Considering the sensitivity related to the data privacy, organizations are looking to prioritize privacy related initiatives and struggling to implement effective frameworks to obtain required objectives. It is not just to protect their value and to be compliant with existing laws, but also to provide something that is the holy grail of the supply chain, which is trust. Primarily, the trust is defined as a measure of confidence to the supplier and customers to ensure prior to engaging within any organization. In order to understand the right strategies to implement the trust frameworks and what exactly is required to implement the privacy frameworks, which is a very important pillar of digital trust today. Let's hear us from our expert today. Today we have joined with Mr. Salman, who is into the technology for almost 26 years now. Well, working locally and internationally, he is a co-founder and director of S2, which is a cybersecurity distributor. He works as a CTO of the business. S2 provides solutions related to the information and cybersecurity relevant to all the business industries, including FSI, government, defense, enterprise, education, etc. Very warm welcome, Salman, on the show.
Thank you, Ahmed Javaid.
So, just to start, when with a quick introduction of myself, because maybe most of the people are listening to me for the first time on this forum as a moderator. My name is Ahmed Javaid, and I'm the CEO of a recently launched startup named Satellite. It's primarily focuses on the digital trust services. I'm known as in the region as a digital trust advisor, cybersecurity strategist, speaker, coach, and a builder of the critical partnerships and the strategic alliances. I'm also considered as specialized in uniting the fractionalized groups for a shared sense of purpose. So, with further ado, I'll just directly jump on our discussion. So, Salman, just a very brief introduction of what exactly is your view on a digital privacy for a layman to understand today.
Right. So it means, as you said, the layman, you must trust the party who you're exchanging information. It could be as as good as Facebook or Twitter or WhatsApp. To understand or have an awareness of why this information is critical to you and what you should be sharing and what not is something which is critical to everybody, because now you don't have immediate impacts, you have long-term impacts on your profile as well, because people profile you now based on your thoughts and the kind of information you share across the platforms, because now this is the way people look at you, because it's not only your actual physical profile, it's more of your social profile on this social media, which drives your personality. So for a layman's personality perspective, even for enterprises who are into this business, who have to have a social media presence in today's day, because without which you are not existing at all. This is something which is critical for everyone to understand what to share and why to share, and how to drive it.
As you very rightly said, like yes, man, it's basically about your profile, how you want to present yourself, and there is a very important aspect of this whole thing, which is the sensitive information, because generally in a day-to-day matters we deal with a lot of information, and there is some sort of information which is can be classified as a sensitive information which we won't be willing to share with others. So and generally, like as you rightly said, the organizations and the people, they are sensitive about some of the information. For example, I I will not be like willing to share my salary information per se with the public. So it will be considered as a sensitive too. So how important it is from your standpoint is to people and organizations to understand the need of protecting sensitive information.
So when it comes to sensitivity, I think it will be again more of a different perception of what is sensitive for one and what is not. So I think at that point, it becomes more important for us to bring in the frameworks and good practice or best practices, that what is implied around us by the people who have been implementing it for ages now. And I think we if we go back to our roots, at that even time when there was no social media or actual media at all, people tend to keep things confidential to a certain point, or so to a certain degree, where they would share people only who they trust. So it's not something public, or your public profiles were not there, right? So I think what I believe, especially in cybersecurity or information security space per se, is you need to understand your basics first. What is good for your organization, or for individual even, or what not. That helps you to benchmark what would you share and what would you not want to share. And then whatever you don't want to share, then how to start protecting that is something which we work with different kind of people and organizations to how to work with that. So it's more of that that I would like to say here.
Yeah, I believe that you spotted on the bullseye. When considering the basics, because considering the today's like information era where trust deficit is unavoidable. When wherever we deal with, we have a lot of like the such unwanted or unethical actors around, where we need to ensure the protection of our sensitive information. But when it comes to the personal information, such as like my name and address, or anything which can be used to identify me, people become even more sensitive, which is generally referred as a PII. I
Right.
mean, what is the common understanding in your perspective, like among the public? When is there a further need to enhance the awareness about what is PII?
Definitely, yes. If I specifically talk about Pakistan or Middle Eastern perspective, you would see more of conservative, which again comes to the Gen Z and then all that. So people who are from the Gen Z, they don't mind sharing anything on the internet today. They don't care,
Right.
except their private information which they would want to hide it. But if you go back and we about, let's say, 15-20 years back, it was still more conservative kind of a society, which were keeping things to a very private level was something which is, I think, was still practiced at all levels. So and you go back, if you talk about the corporate world, if you talk about organizations, governments and all that, so it becomes more and more critical, right? At that time, that what is to be shared, how it is to be shared, what is what kind of information that or the language to be used, because PII, as you know, on the personal information side, is something which can be very very damaging to if it goes to wrong hands, and your whole ecosystem can get damaged. You would have seen some news coming in, on the Pakistani media a couple of days back, that someone's personal information is leaked from our FBI, right? Now that is
Yeah.
something which is of vital criticality and very very important. Again, that falls into PII as far as I understand, and it impacts. So now it's just in the news every day from 7 to 11 that this is being discussed and how it's happened and all that. So it
Yeah.
you see the facts all day every day on from one side or another, that losing personal and private information causes great impacts.
Yeah, which is like considering the recent few months, we have seen quite a lot of the privacy breaches, where uh, when of course when we all um, may be sure about this thing that when regulators have to play their role more proactively in legislating such frameworks in order to ensure the data subject rights. For example, when my personally identifiable information, my PII should be protected and owned by myself. No one should use for the marketing purposes. No one should use like for other unethical purposes without my consent. So what's your take on this thing? Like, do we need to have a more legislative frameworks and the standards in the region to be implemented?
My opinion in that, sir, is that it is a journey. We will have to take our own time to understand how the implications, because if you go with a stick in your hand and then say fine, tomorrow onwards you will not do it, people won't learn to it. uh, and my perspective on that would be that there should be legislation, fine, but there should be implementation more of on that, because again, on the organization, which is the corporate side, on the personal, fine, corporate, you could bring in different agencies to comply that, but people would still find ways how to not comply with that because of commercial limitations, because of technical limitations somewhat. But on the other side, when it comes to individuals, I think it's more of a preferential sort of a thing, where yes, with the information which can harm, we should be create, or we must create awareness, and that's very very critical, that people should not go and that I'm going that space and you start sharing your pins that this is where I am, or start sharing selfies and all that. So it can be as simple as this, or it could be very complex, where you talk about your credit card information, your residential address, your health information. Like HIPAA is one of the standards. I think that is all in all developed world. But if you come to Middle East or the South Asian countries, you would not find that being implemented such. The implementation would be weaker, I would say. So if you start doing it from tomorrow, I think it will be very very difficult and unjustified for people to implement it from day zero. So more of a journey, I would say, that you give some timelines to people, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road, give them step by step guidance, also what to do, how to do it, because again, that's where the consulting approach comes into picture. That fine, you also advise people that what needs to be done, what is the need of the hour. So let's say put P1, P2, P3, and P4. This is how you're going to work on it.
Exactly. I mean, that's very rightly said. And indeed, there is a need to enhance the awareness among the public, because privacy is not only a corporate related subject, it is impacting the individuals, citizens, residents, corporates, states, agencies, you name it. And and most often the damage is severe in terms of reputation loss and so on. So in our like field, we generally refer to as 3R principle, which is like any privacy breach can result into the related risk exploitation, the loss of reputation, and the regulation in non-conformity as well, or the standard. So considering the whole thing, this plethora, when what is your advice on the CISOs to play a part, or to drive the privacy initiatives within the organizations? Because namely, if we see, like, the privacy is comparatively a new emerging area, or more, I would say, a subset, considered to be a subset of information security. Now, information security was been there from a couple of decades, which has been matured enough now. A lot of people have talked about, a lot of frameworks came. Banking industry is one of the good example where a lot of investment have been done. So CISO have to play a very critical role in implementing effective privacy frameworks. What's your advice to them?
Uh, so if you talk about organization, because that covers more of a dynamics environment, including its own employees. So that's more of an internal side of data privacy. And then if you talk from the perspective of their external, where the customers are involved, it's a two-pronged sword where the CISO has to just work on top of it. So uh, I think you need to start from internal first, because the information leakage normally happens. The studies would say 85 to 90% information leakage happens from the internal side. It could be a grudge, it could be something which is unintentional, it could be somebody who is not happy with the management decisions, it could be
Yeah, the
somebody, yeah,
insider threat is
exactly,
more
exactly,
devious. Yeah.
exactly. So and protecting that is more difficult because a lot of people have access to a lot of information. So aligning the silos or putting things into the right perspective, that who is allowed to access what, and to what degree, because even within those silos you have to create sub silos of that. That's fine, because you give access to somebody and then you assume that they won't damage that. It could be as an assumption which would not be applicable to anybody at all. So I think it's very, very rightly happening recently. If we talk about Pakistan, where we work, the identity access management and privilege access management is something which is getting a lot, which is very hot nowadays. Not only banks, even enterprise level customers are also asking to do that, because now they understand that one wrong information and just the small click of sharing that information on the social media can disrupt, not only disrupt, they can bankrupt the organization in couple of minutes. So
Indeed.
yeah, so it's becoming very, very critical. External perspective, information security can help the governance side of it, because you reduce the access. And what I believe, look, the potential of getting hacked or your information breach is there until you are connected to internet by any means, right? People ask me how to protect. I said, just plug off from the internet. You are protected. That's it.
That's the
There is
ultimate
no other way.
solution, though.
So
Exactly.
yeah. So if you are connected, you are exposed. Then you have to look into your protection possibility.
Indeed, the prioritization of such related initiatives for the CISO is very critical in terms of implementing effective privacy frameworks. Though, and as you rightly said, the identity side of it and the rights management is one of the important aspects to consider. But how about the data side? Because, like, identity access management solutions, PAM solutions will help us, like, monitoring the access and giving the access to the data objects but it needs to be driven from a business purpose, right? So without such organizations who do not have an appropriate data governance framework implemented, do you think it's effective to start directly jump on implementing IEM solutions?
If you talk about the SME, SMB, or a smaller enterprise, I think it will be very, very difficult for them to afford those infrastructure. I think the most convenient way for them to go is to adopt cloud, where things are already implemented at the mass level. You just need to pick and choose what is there and what you need to do today, and without adding in more resources in terms of infrastructure, in terms of human resources, in terms of training, in terms of so many costs. So if you are an organization who believes in protecting information, I think cloud could be a very good, very quick way of adopting those practices. Because if you want to implement,
That,
then not only implementation, operations becomes a serious overhead. Because I've seen in my, I came back to Pakistan about 6, 7 years back, started cybersecurity in Pakistan. The challenge what I see is not implementation. I've seen major organizations having multiple solutions doing the same thing, right?
exactly.
But
And
it's
very
not the challenge that
functionalized kind of
exactly,
like,
exactly, yeah,
components work, yeah,
yeah.
not talking to each other.
Exactly. And the challenge is that there is nobody ready to operate them as the or using the best practices or the practices defined by the vendors for that solution. So
Indeed.
operations is something which is again goes 24 by 7. You have to be on your toes every time. That's more challenging. So adopting cloud for people who don't want to invest into things, managed services concepts, cloud concepts is something the way to go for those people.
Cloud definitely brings a lot of benefit in terms of security as well, because it offers at least a minimum baseline at the platform level. But my point was more into the data governance framework itself, because most of the organizations, they do not have a clearly defined sense or the purpose of why they are collecting and storing all that information, because
Right.
each byte is costing them. Like, for example, if I go and subscribe for my organization from a GCP platform, I need to pay as per the use. I need to pay per byte. So each
Right.
data is costing me, right? So I
Right.
need to first understand that why we need to collect all that information. Is it important for us? And then we need to define that data classification strategy or the framework where an appropriate rules and parameters needs to be defined based within the business context, so that we can identify or classify the sensitive information which we really want to protect and where the technology is coming from. So what sort of like the standards and frameworks you would recommend for the privacy and security leaders to consider when it comes to implement such frameworks?
Uh, if you talk about frameworks, we can look at GRC, we can look at ISO standards. Uh, my perspective is that all these things are in place already. Still, are we practicing those standards? One fine, you will implement one fine
Right.
day. Which I've seen people
Mhm.
using Excel sheets to do compliance, right? A few thousand rows and then a few hundred columns on the right side, and you say checklist, everything is green, but you still get hacked, you still lose information. How in the world is happening that? So I think it's a integration of your compliance with your operation is something which is critical. So if you're let's say using GRC, if you're using let's say if you're about ISO 27001 or anything else, uh, implementation fine, taking consulting services, you look at what you want. People don't even share what the problems they have right now. That's the basis of when you start. You go to a doctor, you don't share where your pain is. You would get a paracetamol where you don't need a paracetamol, you might need something else, right? So or you have a pain in your foot and you're telling them I have a pain in my head, I have a headache. So wrong information, wrong perception. So uh, these are the challenges where we need to understand that how do we go about that and then follow any stand, because what I have seen in my experience is that all these frameworks are about 70% same, right? The change happens about 20 to 30%. 70% frameworks would tell you the same thing in a different language, that do this and this. If you do
It's
that, you
just a
will
guideline.
exactly, it's a
Most
guideline.
of the
So
frameworks are just a guideline.
yeah, so you tweak in where based on your society, based on your organization, based on your infrastructure, based on your people and all that. So important is to first of all understand, yes, I have a need of information protection, because for enterprises to realize, and I met a CISO about a year back. For him, losing the credit card information does not mean that fine. Somebody takes my credit card, should I care? So
Really?
I've seen that kind of CISOs as
Okay.
well, and then I have CISOs who are so rudiment that they would say, "No, I would not let you touch my keyboard. My engineer will sit and
Mhm.
type in. You just tell in the commands." Right? So there are two
That's a general
extremes.
attitude, yeah.
Exactly.
That general's attitude, the army
Exactly.
generals, you
So the point is that yes, governance, risk, and compliance is
Mhm.
something which is has to be built into you as a CISO, as a CIO. and as a director of business as well, because as a business, if I, because more mainly organizations run where the business comes from, right? The compliance, the security, compliance, IT, and all that. These are all supporting functions normally. I'm not saying they are not critical. They are very very critical to implement whatever the business desires. So, but the things would run based on the business requirements. That's what I've learned in my 26 years. I've been repeatedly told, don't mess with the business. All right, just do whatever you're
So
told to do. Right. So
understanding the businesses is pivotal. I mean, without understanding the business challenges,
yes,
in my opinion, I think it's whatever we do, we will not be able to implement the right strategies to protect the information assets. So as you rightly said, like there's a lot of different CISOs of the different mindsets. So what do you think, like from a leadership standpoint? I think when we definitely need a strong personality CISOs who should be able to drive such a strong initiatives in the organizations. And what sort of like the personality traits they should hold like when it comes to that role, because such a CISO who is not bothering that if his credit card is lost, I think um, is unacceptable, I would say, by principle. Right.
right,
So
right.
what's your take on
So
this?
my take is, MSM is that again it will be a two-pronged approach. So not only CISOs, the BODs of these
Mhm.
huge organizations, those people who are non technology oriented, they still use their smartphones as digital phones. Fine, means even I do that about 80%. Uh, they need to be made aware that what are the risks of data breaches now, what is the cost of it. And one thing wrong, if you come to Pakistan perspective, we tell people the cost of that in dollars, right? So the first impression is that it's not my currency. I don't even lose $3 million in total if I have a data breach, because fine, for Pakistan, $3 million is about 750 million rupees, approximately 700 million. So fine, I don't have that bank that I can lose 700 million in a data breach. So it's more speaking local language. Why did we even started STU as a cybersecurity distribution? Is that you need to understand the local environment first before you go and present anything to your buyer, because that's very very critical. If you don't, if you talk an alien language with an alien or a remote example, it won't fit into the local environment. So I think it's vital that we need to create use cases who are localized. We need to create frameworks who are localized, who where people with their limited information are also able to adopt to it. If I start giving Harvard examples everywhere, where I come from a commerce background, uh, it's difficult. People would not understand. Uh, Pakistan has gone into technology for almost 15, 18 years, where we have formalized IT education. So I would still say that we still have about 10 years for people who have graduated from those colleges to reach the CIO, CISOs, and those mature positions where they have the understanding of what they want to implement and how they want to do it. Not the CISO side, but the business side of it. Because understanding your compliance is not that fine. That my central bank is saying do this, and I force to do that. You would never comply. You would just trying to find a workaround for that. But if you understand once that fine, this is critical for me, this is vital for my organization, this is very, very critical for my existence, right? Then things would come into play rather conveniently, that people would understand the dynamics and the criticality of that information which is available to them, which they are storing, which is very, very rightly highlighted. That you just bring in everything, every piece of information, and then just sleep on it. You don't know what you have, and even if you lose, you still don't know that you've lost it. So until after 7 8 months or a year, somebody published that on dark web and said, now I have 1 million records available. Come and take it from me for $2 per record or something like that. So as I said, it's going to be a journey. We need to make people aware of it's critical. It is going to create disasters if we don't handle it directly. It's sensitive. It's more expensive than oil now, and we have seen India, Saudi Arabia example last year with India exports, IT exports crossed Saudi Arabian oil exports. So information is oil now. And it is highly inflammable.
Indeed, it is. It is definitely, and the way it has been used or misused or abused, I think that's a serious consideration needs to be or on the board level table or round table to consider that how to protect the this like the oil of the time for any organization. But I would say the data flow diagrams usually give the blueprint of any organization that how it goes and what type of blood is in the veins of that organization. Is it like needs to be cleansed, or to ensure the data integrity and quality needs to be improvised and so forth. All these leadership attention, I would say. And as you rightly said, like the CISO or anyone who is in that position to drive such initiative should have, if not coming from a business background, at least should have a appropriate business understanding and knowledge so that they can understand the business challenges to address. So as we are running short of time, so at the end, then I would like to request, like, if what is your last takeaway, what for the audience to take from our discussion today?
Right. So I think for people to take away from this is that you must realize that information, any kind of information, it is important, and storing, reusing, manipulating any kind, you play with all the information that is available to you. So the risk of losing is from everywhere. So store only what is needed. Number one, don't just keep storing that, and have an archival policy. Just archive or discard. So you have a life cycle of data management as well. The second thing is that whatever is traveling or whatever is at rest. Sorry for a bit of technical language, but I'm forced to do that. Have some sort of a policy to encrypt that information, so not everybody's, even if somebody is able to access that information, cannot use it. The third thing is apply those policies or frameworks like GRCs and ISOs. If you cannot even afford to do, it's not financial affordability, it's technical affordability, resource availability, and all that. Start from somewhere, right? Whatever you think as a business is more critical, you start from somewhere. So you can just understand, and once you start enjoying your life cycle, that you will start investing more time and more resources in your journey. So my request to CISOs and CIOs is that don't take the whole $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million of plan to your bosses. They won't accept it, right? So whenever you're doing it, go into pieces, understand what the technology can bring in now, what is the need of the business today. So start from that as a growth path. Don't try to do big bang everything. It won't work in all times. Sometimes it would work where there's central bank push to do things. Then it becomes more difficult for you to operate it and maintain it. But I think in a journey where you start grasping it slowly and gradually, make it part of your personality, your organization's personality, I think that will help you drive better.
Indeed. Very, very beautiful message. And thank you so very much, Salman, for joining us today. And with this, admin, we will conclude our session and discussion today. And certainly, privacy is a very important topic to be considered at each and every level of any organizations, even among the public. There is a serious need to enhance the awareness of the sensitivity of such information and the responsible use of the technology gadget